everyone. My name is Alan Mercadero, and I'm going to be today's moderator. Our topic of discussion is value. So basically what we did was we clumped all of the questions on this particular topic into 6 major items of discussion. So we will begin with the item number 1. So we'll discuss the long-term goals of Mars exploration.
Okay, so first of all, just putting men on Mars is a long-term goal. This is not something that's going to be happening in the next decade or probably even 2 decades. So I don't really think NASA is really thinking about, oh, well, what are we going to do 30 years after we get to Mars? Because we're just trying to get there right now. You know, what were the long-term goals of going to the moon? You know, there really weren't any. They're just getting there was a big deal. So this is kind of the same way. However, you know, as being so far away, you know, you have to have some sort of presence on Mars, some sort of long-term presence. So I think that's really the way they're going to have to go about this. They can't just live out of a, you know, astronauts just can't live out of a lander for a few days and then, you know, rush right back to Earth. So.
Yeah, like I think, again, like getting to Mars is a long-term goal of the space program, just getting someone there. I don't think, this is going to come up in later discussions as well, I don't think colonizing Mars is really on any part of the game plan right now. I think that's just too huge an undertaking. But having some kind of continued presence on Mars, similar to the space station, I think that would be part of like the long-term goals of our plans with Mars. And I think that there will be a lot of benefit from having that goal.
All right, so our next topic of discussion is going to be on exploring Mars while our own climate is suffering some issues here on Earth. And also along those lines, will we start ignoring our own climate if we start focusing more on Mars climate and trying to live there?
Well, so first off, Earth has an incredible climate. Like, we don't have to do anything, and it takes care of us. It cleans our air, it cleans our water, it does everything for us. So I don't think, this is one of the reasons why I don't think colonizing Mars is anywhere in like the long-term plans, because but I think it'll be a real benefit to go to Mars, because if we have a sustained presence on Mars, it's like an exercise in extreme sustainability. You have to conserve your energy, reuse all your water, reuse all your air, reuse all your soil, everything, like your waste. There can be no waste. Everything is going to get recycled back in. So if we can figure out how to do that on Mars, the implications for life back on Earth are huge. That said, like, do I think that if we go to Mars, are we going to start ignoring our own planet in the hopes that we'll survive on Mars? No, because I don't think we can survive on Mars. So, like, even like what you send 100 people to Mars with some rations and some machines to make air, and you think that's going to be sustainable? It's not going to work. It won't even work on Earth. So, yeah, I don't think that ignoring our own planet is gonna be a side effect of having some little focus on Mars. I only think that benefits can come out of the Mars program for Earth. Yeah, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, so a couple of the questions were concerned with, people thinking that once you start going to Mars, you're gonna start ignoring Earth. Again, I agree with Martha, absolutely not true. There's just no way that would ever work for anyone, ever. And in fact, there are lots of different studies going on now that have taken looking at what we know about Mars and then comparing it to Earth and seeing how we can change our ways so that we don't end up like that. One of those projects is called the High Lakes Project. I worked on it for a summer when I did an internship at NASA Ames. And basically they were looking at these lakes that were in these very high mountain ranges in the Andes, and how they almost exactly mirror some of the climate changes that happened on Mars very, very quickly. So not only are we able to learn about our own planet, but we're also able to see kind of like a worst case scenario if we continue doing things the way that we have been. So, I mean, that's by no means the only project that looks at Mars, applies what we know about it to Earth, and then tries to figure out how we could fix things. And I think that, just like Martha said, the more we know about Mars, the more we're going to find out about our own planet, and the better we're going to be to keep everyone alive on both planets eventually. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, like Earth is an incredible planet. And we're extremely, like, it's a really special thing that we have here. So I think, you know, it is important that we take care of it. I don't think Mars research takes away from that. I think it only adds to it. We realize what a special place we have here.
Our next topic of discussion is going to focus on Mars exploration and the benefits that it brings to people. And a little subtopic will be benefits that it brings to the average American.
Well, for me, I was inspired to become an engineer based on seeing space shuttles launch in my home state of Florida. So I think the space program just is a great inspiration and motivation for people to study science and technology and engineering and math. And so there's that aspect, which is, there's not a lot of things that inspire people more than traveling in space. That's just like so many movies, so many books, you see it, and all throughout our culture, how exploring inspires people. And then you start to get curious, well, how do they do that? What kind of technology does it take? And oh, that would be an awesome job. And you just start going on a path that will benefit society and give yourself a better life too. So there's that aspect for me.
Agreed. So I'll tackle the average Joe portion of the question. So you know, a lot of people are like, okay, great, we went to Mars. What does that mean to me? And very selfish, I think. But you know, I understand. So first of all, we see things in our normal lives, things like solar energy. Your energy bills are lower. I don't know about you personally, but in places like Hawaii and places like California that get a lot of sun, even in Alaska where there's like tons of sun, they use solar energy to lower their electric bills, which means more money in your pocket to drink beer. Wait, this is freshman level class, so you got a couple years for that, right? Anyway. So, going to Mars, we talked about it a little bit in one of the earlier questions. Every single ounce of energy, every ounce of water, like every little thing has to be tracked and sustainable. So, the Mars program, we're looking at ways to do things without using energy. We're looking at purifying water without using energy. Looking at, waste management, energy creation, all of these things are things that you're going to be able to do cheaper on Earth by applying that technology, which is going to put money back in your pocket as an average American. So, you know, a lot of people don't think like that, but it's happening already in your daily lives, and it will happen even more with a Mars project.
And the other thing are medical advancements as well. Whenever you have a human going into this extreme environment, they need different life support and even like preventative care against radiation. So all these technologies will come back to hospitals here on Earth one day.
Telemedicine is a huge thing in the space program. You know, doctors can't be with astronauts all the time, so diagnosing over a computer and even performing procedures over a computer. Doctors are performing operations using robots now. It's
so
that stuff
all
is
the rural medicine aspects and going into countries that don't have enough medical care. You know, if you have telemedicine, then it will help rural areas and third world countries here. So. And another thing to note is that when we are investing into the space program, it's not like we're just taking all the money and just, sending the money to Mars. No, like we're using that money in companies and projects here on Earth. So it benefits the economy to be flooding, all these projects into every state has some bit of the NASA budget that is from contractors that help develop different aspects of the technology that we need. So it helps the economy on Earth. It brings resources and new capabilities that we didn't have before, and it inspires people.
And also, besides all the benefits that were already mentioned here, great examples, there are some benefits that are just undiscovered yet. We might stumble upon some, incredible discovery sometime in the future just because we're looking for something else. That has happened over the course of human history all the time. So some of the benefits just might not be realized right now, and we might not even be able to list them. So that's something to keep in mind. Well, our next topic of discussion is going to be the possibility of having a happy and a fulfilling life either on Mars or in space. And a subtopic of that will be people's personal religious beliefs and how they contradict or not contradict with space exploration as a whole.
Well, I am the least religious one here, so I'll go ahead and start us off. I think that it's absolutely possible to have a fulfilling life in space. It's really about what it is that you want your life to be about, just like it is on Earth. If you want your life to be about music, you can go and study music, you can play the oboe, you can do anything you want as long as that is fulfilling to you personally. For me, I would find nothing more fulfilling than going to Mars, than being able to live there for as long as I could, even though it might not be the most practical thing at the moment. But yeah, devoting my life to science and exploration sounds like one of the most fulfilling things I could do. And so that's why I'm here at High Seas in general. And I think that living in space, if that's where your heart is, then I couldn't imagine a more fulfilling place for you to be.
And I guess that's part of our project too, right? We're here kind of being a test bed for that. How can we live happily in this kind of confined space? And so far we are really happy and fulfilled. So I guess we have a bit of evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't think there's... I think it's kind of an outlook, and you can have a happy and fulfilling life wherever you end up being born. Whether it's here on Earth in, America or Canada or in the developing world or in space, I think it's up to you. So,
Now the religious portion.
Well,
yeah.
for the religious part, so I grew up Catholic. I'm still a practicing Catholic, and I don't find a contradiction with, space travel. I know the Bible doesn't, say go explore Mars and God will be happy. But it doesn't say a lot of things about life. And to me, God is, this infinite, benevolent being, and so to exclude him from space doesn't really make sense. So I also have the point of view that we are kind of co-creators with God. We create our families, we create our own lives and develop technology, and I think that really that's what God wants us to do is to use our potential and keep growing and creating and using everything we can and everything that he provides.
Yeah, I'm also Catholic. I've never found anything that in religion that contradicts the regular life, I guess, and science and what we're doing with space exploration or biological research. So I don't know. I don't think there's any contradiction.
All right, our next topic of discussion is the rationale for spending resources on a Mars mission, Mars exploration, versus allocating that money and those funds to other things that could be used here on Earth to solve things like poverty, etc.
So one of the things I'd like to address first is sort of the size of the NASA budget, that people don't necessarily have a clear idea of how the government spends its money. And NASA's budget is about $18 billion a year, which is less than 0.5% of the total government spending. So in the big scheme of things, the amount of money that is getting spent on space exploration and space science and all that kind of stuff is really quite small in the big scheme of things. the budget was about 4.5% during the end of the Apollo program. So much, much larger than it is now. I personally would like to see it creep back up towards that. I mean, maybe not 4.5%, but maybe 1%, a penny for every tax dollar.
Yeah, that would be nice. And it's not just the funds that that people are worried about. A lot of your questions were wondering whether or not it is morally acceptable to take all of our smart people away from, solving poverty or solving crime or, making sure all the drugs go away or something like that. And instead, they're working on Mars stuff, and is that morally acceptable? That's a life choice. You can't, I work on robots that I want to see go into space. If you were to tell me, okay, now you can only work on robots that clean sewers, I would probably still do it because robots are cool, but, my heart wouldn't be in it. I wouldn't work as hard. I wouldn't have the same drive. And in the end, you'd end up getting just a worse result. So saying that you need to allocate people's lives to a certain purpose, I feel like that's just taking away one of their most basic rights to do what makes them happy.
The other thing is that you're never going to solve all the problems on Earth. So to have that as sort of your goal for when you can start exploring space is kind of ludicrous. I mean, it's the same with problems on Earth. It would be silly to say, like, oh, we're not going to try to fix global warming until we fix water pollution. Like, it just doesn't seem very logical to sort of restrict yourself to one issue at a time. Because you don't really know what the benefits are going to be of trying to explore all the areas of interest at once.
And another point just on NASA scientists in general, most places that are working on space programs, like sending, for example, a robot to Titan is one of the main goals of the robotics program that I worked with for a couple years. At the exact same time, and using all of the same resources, people, etc., they're also looking at robots that can go through very small, like, ventilation ducts, looking for bombs, for terrorist detection and stuff like that. They're looking at basically using all the same technology that we're trying to develop for another planet and using it on Earth to the best of its ability. And I think that we've talked about that a lot in the other sections too, how everything that we do for Mars has a ton of spin-offs for Earth as well.
And so finally, the budget for proposed NASA or Mars missions is something in the range of 50 to 100 to 150 billion dollars. So potentially could even fit within the current NASA budget spread out over a decade or two, if you were willing to sacrifice a lot of the other work that NASA's doing. But again, with a relatively small budget increase, you could do both. All the stuff that they're currently doing and do a Mars mission as well at the same time.
And also, to sort of wrap it up, I think Per had a very specific question that I'll read out here. Is our focus on exploring Mars incompatible with a commitment to solving the problems facing us here on Earth, or is it complementary to that commitment? And I think it's fairly clear from what Zach and Sophie have mentioned so far that it's very much complementary. We don't have to choose one or the other. We don't have to, throw money in one spot and not the other. There's a balance. We can find it, and we can continue solving the world's problems and still exploring Mars.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers your guys' questions. And over and out.
Bye, Per.